Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we will begin in 2 Samuel chapter 10, verse 1. It happened after this that the king of the people of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his place. So that after, it happened after this, after the victories that David would have after being brought into the kingdom, after taking Jerusalem, after building his house with the cedars from Tyre, the prophecy of and the promise delivered from God by the voice of the prophet Nathan, the kindness shown to Mephibosheth in the last chapter. After all these things have occurred, after David has settled into this time of peace, the relative peace for that ancient world, the king of the people of Ammon has died. Now his son is going to take his place. Then David said, I will show kindness to Hanun, the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness to me. Now we don't exactly know where Nahash showed this kindness. Nahash of Ammon more than likely is the same Nahash who threatened Jabesh-Gilead at the beginning, right after Saul was anointed. In that very beginning where he came to Jabesh-Gilead and threatened to destroy them and slaughter them, but would save them and allow them to survive if he was allowed to gouge out one of the eyes of every single man. And they sent and said, hey, give us a couple days. If no one comes to protect us, then we'll allow you to take our eyes. Otherwise, let there be war. And Nahash, in his arrogance, allowed it to happen. And in came Saul with the rest of Israel to save Jabesh-Gilead. So that's not exactly a good man. So what kindness did he show David? Possibly because of that hatred and that defeat at the hands of Saul. It could be that during the time of David's fleeing from Saul, that he could count on the people of Ammon, that they weren't openly hostile to him because they saw him as an enemy of their enemy. It could be that when the civil war broke out, when David first got crowned by Judah, and the other 10 tribes of Israel are crowning Ishbosheth, basically the puppet king of Abner, to be king for all those years he spent in Hebron as king, that during that time of civil war that maybe Nahash had been an ally of his during that time. We're not really sure exactly what the kindness was. But we do know that in chapter 8 that David went on and had a bunch of military victories and placed people to tribute. Moab, the Philistines. Ammon was one of those people he put to tribute. Ammon was one of those nations that ended up paying tribute to Israel. So he could be seeing this as the king of one of the people who were now almost one of his vassal states, one of the people under his submission now as king of Israel. That in order to show kindness to an ally of sorts, that he now wants to send something to comfort this young man over the loss of his father, and as he now rises to be king, maybe to solidify an allyship in a way. So David sent by the hand of his servants to comfort him concerning his father. And David's servants came into the land of the people of Ammon. And the princes of the people of Ammon said to Hanun, their lord, do you think that David really honors your father because he has sent comforters to you? Has David not rather sent his servants to you to search the city, to spy it out and to overthrow it? So these princes, these advisors, now looking at this young king, this king that they can try to mold and manipulate, kind of the way Abner was doing with Ishbosheth, and trying to see if he can mold and push him into a certain direction. They're now questioning the motives of David. Because people with questionable motives and questionable morals always question the morals and motives of others. They project their vileness and their wickedness and their distrust and dishonesty onto others. If you know somebody and have ever met anybody who is a prolific liar, who will lie a lot, who has no problem sinning, whenever they see somebody who isn't that way, somebody who is the antithesis of themselves, they will project that onto someone else. They will project their wickedness and their sin onto other people because they don't believe other people can live outside of the way that they've decided to live their lives. They've come to this conclusion for themselves, so everyone else must fit this mold as well, because they can't view other people as actually being decent, honest, hardworking, upright people. Not sinless, but more righteous in a way of living in a way that honors the Lord, living in a way that just treats people with dignity and treats them as equals instead of stones to step upon to get to a greater level of societal or political prestige, which is what these people are trying to do. They're trying to get in good with the king. They're trying to mold the king to shape the nation for what they want to do. They might really hate the fact that since they're princes, these are the rich people. These are the lords. These are the people who have the wealth in Ammon. They're being taxed by David, and now they want to be out from under this tax. They want to shape the nation in a way that will pull them out of the thumb of Israel, out of the thumb of King David's power. So now they're going to cast their own nastiness and their own selfish ambitions and project them onto David and tell their Lord, the new king, you really think David's doing this to honor your father? You really think he sent people to comfort you? He sent gifts to comfort you? No. These are spies. They're searching out the city. They're spying it out. They want to overthrow it entirely. Before, they've just defeated our armies and put us to tribute. But now he's looking to completely overthrow us. That's what David's doing. Don't be fooled by what they're doing. Don't be fooled by their supposed kindness, because they're nothing but vile and wicked. And sadly, that is the hearts of many, many people, that when they have wickedness, they project that wickedness on others. They believe that when they see people who proclaim and show themselves to be Christian, they say, oh, well, they're just acting happy. More often than not, when they do studies, especially because they're self-reported studies. That's the way a lot of studies work. Happiness, sexual enjoyment, gratification, all these things, they're self-reported. And so often evangelical Christians will report themselves to be the happiest. I'm really happy. And when somebody who's fallen away from it because they wanted to pretend to be Christian, because they were brought up in a church, so they prayed, so they believed, so they read the Bible, but then they fell away because they weren't happy that way. That was all rules and disgustingness and hypocrisy. Which, honestly, if you go to a church, the old saying is, if you ever find a perfect church, like absolutely perfect, there's nothing wrong, it is sparkling, it is perfect, do not attend, because you will screw it up. Because you're a sinner and you're going to ruin their perfection. So leave them alone. We're all hypocritical. Because we're all trying our best to live to an ideal, and we're falling short of it. So, sure. But there are people that they look at these studies and they say, those people are just lying. They're not really happy. They're not sexually fulfilled like some degenerate is. No. They're lying, because if they don't lie, then they'll be put out of the church. I don't even understand that. Like, I would have believed it 10 years ago when I was an atheist. I definitely would have believed that was true and probably did. But as any Christian, any follower of Christ knows, we're not happy in the way that they view happiness. It's not the same thing. When you have somebody you love wasting away from cancer, you're not happy. When you've afflicted, or when your child's hurt, or when they're being bullied, you're not happy. But if someone were to ask me, are you happy in your life? My mind is thinking not happiness, not that fleeting momentary emotion. My mind is thinking, I am joyful in the Lord and in the blessings he has provided for me. I praise him in the storm that I am in because I know he is with me. And if he ever sees fit, he can end that storm. But even if he does not end that storm, he will see me through it. When the storm is coming upon the disciples in the boat, and it's raging, the waves are tossing them, Jesus is sleeping in it, in the back of the boat. And they start crying out, "Why do you not care if we die?" And he tells the storm to calm and the winds and waves to stop. And they're all shocked, and he asks them why they didn't have any faith. It wasn't, you didn't have any faith that I could tell this to stop? Something that is attributed solely to God in the Psalms? No, it's, why didn't you have any faith that even through the storm we'd make it to the other side? I told you to get in the boat and we were going to sail to the other side. I told you it was going to happen. I told you we're going to get there. I can sleep here and we can sail through the rough waters because I'm with you and you trust my word. So when I say my life is joyful and they use the word happiness in the survey, I'm not thinking of a momentary happiness as I won't be thinking of a momentary sadness. I'm thinking of a lifelong eternal joy that comes through the blessings of the Father because of what he has offered us, the gift of reconciliation with him through the Son, Christ Jesus. So often people project their own view of what hurt them or what they saw as restrictive, because so many people fall out of Christianity, and as the epistles of John will say, they were never, if they were truly of, they were never of us because they left us. I know I just butchered that, but that's basically the paraphrase, is if you were truly a Christian, you'd still be a Christian. The only reason you went away from being a Christian is because you never were a Christian. You were never actually one. You were play acting as one. And that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing at all. You went through the motions of religious action, but you never actually accepted Christ into your heart. You never gave yourself to him to be his. You just went through the religious motions. Jesus would say in the Gospels, there will come a time when people will cry out and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we heal people in your name? And he will say to them, be gone, I never knew you. You can go through the religious functions. You could even tie the name of Jesus to them, as so many cults do, like Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses or Seventh-day Adventists. You can try to use the name of Jesus, but you've never accepted him. So if you've never accepted him, then depart from me because I never knew you. You're going through the religious motions, but you're not actually a Christian. A Christian is a little Christ. It's somebody who follows Jesus. You've submitted yourself to his authority, and you've allowed him to be the sole arbiter of what happens in your life. That's where joy comes in. So the people who are reporting these high levels of happiness because they're viewing it through the lens of joy, they're not lying. They're actually joyful because they know their joy doesn't come from the momentary, but from the eternal. But so often people will project their own inadequacies, their own failures onto others and tell them they're lying. And here you have this young king having these advisors cast their duplicitousness and project it onto David and onto his young men who he sent out to comfort him. And now this action, this projection is going to have consequences for the people. Not just David's people, but for the people of Ammon as well. Because of the action and false counsel of the people that are whispering into the ears of this young king. Therefore Hanun took David's servants, shaved off half their beards, cut off their garments in the middle, at their buttocks, and sent them away. So they shaved off half their face, which back then nobody really shaved their beard. And Jews were not even supposed to shave their beards. They weren't supposed to do it by the Levitical laws. They were supposed to let them grow. No razor was supposed to really shave off their full face. So I'm pretty sure they could trim it. They didn't really have beard trimmers back then, not electric ones, not like we got now. So they would normally let their beards grow. They wouldn't go clean shaven a la the way the Romans would, or the Greeks. But then they cut off their garments. They wore robes. They didn't wear underwear. So they're cutting them up at the hips towards the middle so their bare butts are flying out. So that they are absolutely embarrassed. He embarrasses these men and throws them out. They come to comfort him because of the loss of his father and because of the evil, duplicitous advice of his advisors. He mistreats King David's servants, almost as a sign of strength against the king that is over him, the king that has put him the tribute, as if this wouldn't have any negative consequences to these kind of actions. When they told David, he sent to meet them because the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, "Wait at Jericho until your beards have grown and then return." So they were greatly ashamed. So it's not so much a punishment, it reads. So he's not saying, you're not worthy to come back to Jerusalem where the ark of God is. Stay here. But because they were greatly ashamed to return home, he's telling them, wait at Jericho, which at this point exists, but it's no longer a walled city. That will come later, I believe, in Kings and Chronicles, where somebody will actually rebuild Jericho with the walls that Joshua had cursed by the word of God. But here Jericho's more just a regular unwalled city. It's not what it was, but it still exists as a settlement. And he's telling them, wait there when your beards have grown back in, because it might be a week or two. Depends on how fast your beard grows. Wait, when they grow back in, then you'll return. You won't have to face your family and your fellow countrymen and your friends and be ashamed of what had happened to you. Stay back and then return after that happened. When the people of Ammon saw that they had made themselves repulsive to David, the people of Ammon sent and hired the Syrians of Beth Rehoboth and the Syrians of Zobah, 20,000 foot soldiers, and from the king of Maacah 1,000 men, and from Ishtob 12,000 men. So when they see, remember, their army's already been defeated by David. When they see that they've made themselves repulsive to David, they went, oh crap. We need we need to bring in some mercenaries. We need to bring in some bodyguards. We're going to need some help now. We probably shouldn't have done that. So now they're having to hire out soldiers from these other places and bring in foot soldiers to help defend them, because they're now repulsive to David. They're repulsive as a way because they decided that they knew better and that they would now be strong enough to insult and humiliate the men of David. Not that smart when David at this point is pretty much at the height of his power. The nation of Israel would get more powerful under Solomon, but this is about the height of David's power. Now when David heard it, he sent Joab and all the army of the mighty men. Then the people of Ammon came out and put themselves in battle array at the entrance of the gate. And the Syrians of Zoab, Bethrobah, Ishtob, and Maacah were by themselves in the field. So David hears of it, and he sends Joab. Now, Joab's kind of a psychopath. We've already read this quite a few times. He's an incredibly powerful man, but he's also incredibly vicious. And now they got the army. They got the mighty men. They got everybody. David's not dealing with it. You don't even know what his response, we don't even know what his response would have been had they not hired out all these mercenaries because of how repulsive they made themselves in the eyes of David. He might not have actually tried to wipe Ammon off the face of the earth. But now they're bringing in soldiers, so now you humiliated his comforters and look like you're gearing up for war. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. They go, oh wow, we've made ourselves look really bad in the eyes of David. He might attack us. So let's bring in all these people. And that causes him to actually attack. That brings out his own army. And when they come, the people of Ammon put themselves in battle array at the entrance to the gate. They stand at the gate of the city. They stand at the ready to defend the city itself. But all of the mercenaries are actually in the field to do the battle. They've moved them out to do battle. When Joab saw that the battle line was against him, before and behind, he chose some of Israel's best and put them in battle array against the Syrians. So now he's kind of pincered. Him and his mighty men and his army, he's got the people of Ammon at the city in front of him. He's got all these mercenaries lining up behind him. But Joab's smart. He's like, you know what? I'm going to take some of Israel's best and I'm going to put them that way. And the rest of the people, I'm going to put this way. And the rest of the people he put under the command of Abishai, his brother, that he might set them in battle array against the people of Ammon. So he's got himself, it seems, going against the Syrians. Abishai going against the people of Ammon. He'll hold them off on both ends. Then he said, if the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But the people of Ammon are too strong for you, then I will come to help you. Be of good courage, and let us be strong for our people, and for the cities of our God. And may the Lord do what is good in his sight. So he's saying, look, if you see us flagging, bring some of your soldiers over to reinforce us. If not, we'll pull and reinforce you. Either way, we will hold these two armies off with our mighty men. And may the Lord do what is good in his sight. In his sight. You know, there are certain brands of Christianity that will say you have to pray in the way of Elijah, but only in the way of Elijah at the Battle of Mount Carmel. When he prayed, God will do this, when he called down the fire from the sky. Because God will answer you when you're bold. But so often, including when Jesus was praying, we read something very different, and that is people making the allowance of God, if this be in your will. God, if this be in your will, see us the victory, is what Joab is saying to his brother Abishai. Be of good courage. Be strong for our people, for the cities of God, and may the Lord do what is good in his sight. If we fail, it'll be good in the sight of the Lord. If we succeed, that will be what is good in the sight of the Lord. Because the Lord is true, just, and sovereign. That it's in what is in his will, in his sight, that is good. Not necessarily what we wish, but what he wills be done. That's even the way Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. Lord, if this cup may pass by me, if there is any other way than what is to come, the wrath that is to be poured out on me, the scourging, the brutality of Roman scourging, which was often a death sentence, then the crucifixion and the taunting and the shame that would come on the people during that time, the brutality, the physical brutality of it. But not my will, but your will be done. God, if I can avoid this trial you have me in, or have me about to lead me into, please just take me out of it. Please let me bypass this trial. But your will be done. If it's in your will, let me have healing. Let my child have healing. Let my father, my mother, my uncle, my aunt have healing. But your will be done. And Lord, if it's not in your will to heal, Lord, let us know of your embrace. Let us feel your presence in our lives. Know that we're not alone. That our suffering is not in vain. But that you have a plan, even if that plan is not for our own personal benefit, but the benefit of those around us who can see us praise your name through the storm, so the trial strengthens their faith in you as well. Joab telling Abishai, what is to come will come because it is good in the sight of the Lord, be it our victory or our slaughter. That is the same prayer, the same stance taken by Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they're standing before Nebuchadnezzar. The Lord can deliver us from your fiery furnace, but even if he doesn't, we will not bow down to your idols, because we will do what is good in his sight, even if it ends up being very bad for our physical, tangible, material life here in this earth. Because this earth is not the promise. The promise is in the time to come. That's where our reconciliation with the Lord is. That's where we will be in his love eternally. That point in time, that is what is to come. That is the promise. Let the Lord do what is good in his sight. That's something we should always try to remember a little bit better, because it's something that is very prevalent in our own lives. So Joab and the people who were with him drew near for the battle against the Assyrians, and they fled before him. When the people of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fleeing, they also fled before Abishai and entered the city. So Joab returned from the people of Ammon and went to Jerusalem. So they go to battle. The Syrians, they're mercenaries. They're only going to fight so hard before they flee. Do you kill enough of them, they're going to leave. Jesus made mention of this when he was mentioning himself being the true shepherd and not a hireling. When a hireling is protecting the flock, he's only going to protect them so much. He's only going to sacrifice so much before he turns tail and lets the wolves slaughter his sheep. But the true shepherd whose sheep belong to him, he will do everything to stop that oppression from coming, that slaughter from coming, because he's the true shepherd. So the Syrians, once Joab and the mighty men are getting better of them, they're fleeing. And now that the people of Ammon see that the people are fleeing, now all of a sudden they're going to flee into the city before Abishai. They're starting to pull back. And now with them hunkered in their city, now Joab is going to return from the people of Ammon and go back to Jerusalem. When the Syrians saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they gathered together. And Hadadezer sent and brought out the Syrians who were beyond the river. And they came to Helam. And Shobach, the commander of Hadadezer's army, went out before them. When it was told David, he gathered all Israel, crossed the Jordan, and came to Helam. And the Syrians set themselves in battle array against David and fought with him. Then the Syrians fled before Israel, and David killed 700 charioteers and 40,000 horsemen of the Syrians, and struck Shobach, the commander of their army, who died there. And when all the kings who were servants to Hadadezer saw that they were defeated by Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. So the Syrians were afraid to help the people of Ammon anymore. So they see that they're being defeated, and they start to bring out this whole bigger army. They're like, okay, Joab's left, but we're not going to have this defeat. Now Hadadezer's like, we're going to bring out the Syrians from all over the place. We're going to bring them out from beyond the river. We're going to go to Helam. We're going to bring these other armies out. We're going to do battle with Israel. We're going to show that we're no one to mess with. But all that does is bring the man out himself. All that does is now bring out David, who is a legendary warrior and king. He is known far and wide. Which is hilarious because for so long, unbelievers would claim that David never existed. That David was a mythological figure, like an Achilles or a Hercules. Or Hector of Troy, who was created by the nation of Israel to give them a unifying national identity as this great king who came before them. Because there's no record of David outside of the historical records of the Bible. Because when it comes to historical records, you could have one copy written about a guy 2,000 years after that guy lived. That's history. That's solidified factual history. But when you have 8,000 to 10,000 manuscripts describing the events of the Bible going back hundreds of years before Jesus, now that we have the Old Testament from the Dead Sea Scrolls, when you have all of these things laid out before you, that doesn't count as history. But then, lo and behold, as happens so frequently, archaeologists found in other countries inscriptions about David, about how he was an actual person, and other nations knew who he was and feared him and the power that Israel was at that time. So sure, you fled the field, you were defeated. So you're going to rebound, you're going to regroup, you're going to bring out more of your army, but now you're just bringing the man himself out. And as hard as the mighty men will fight for Joab, these people have been with David from day one. They will not let anything happen to David. Remember, Joab and Abishai are his nephews, for crying out loud. They're not letting anything happen to him. But with him now, possibly even bringing the Ark of the Covenant out with them, as Israel would so often do. We don't get that information, but it's possible they did. So now they have the man and God in ark form as the visual representation of what they considered the symbolic seat of God. And now the Syrians flee before Israel again, as they slaughter so many people. 700 charioteers, 40,000 horsemen. People being slaughtered left and right. It's so great that all of these kings who were servants to this king Hadadezer decide, you know what? we're going to allow ourselves to be put to tribute under Israel. We are not fighting with them. No matter what happens, we are not coming to the help of Ammon. We're going to stay away and stay in a state of taxation servitude, as it was to the nation of Israel and King David. How great a powerful warrior he was, how great and mighty Israel was under his control, under his kingship. The mighty men were not called mighty men for nothing. It was not simply a title. They were powerful warriors. They were mighty in battle. They were men of war, men of blood, men of the sword. It came with some negatives for David, that because he was a man of war, he was not able to build the temple of God, because he was this battle-hardened, brutal sinner who sought the heart of God, that there are certain things that would be withheld for him. But the love of God and the victory in the name of God was something that would never be withheld from David. Victory was always around the corner because he honored God in victory. They are defeated. Now, the way to Ammon is opened. So often, with any victory that comes, as we walk out a Christian walk, is when we face the height of temptation and are susceptible to the worst of falls. David is at the height of his strength. He has had great victory. And in the next chapter, we will see how he gives in to temptation and flesh and lust and leads to his greatest fall. You'll hear people say, I can't go to church. The place would burn down if I step foot in a church. Bad things happen when I go to church. Maybe. Maybe they do. But you're assigning the wrong thing in the wrong time. Bad things are happening when you set foot in a church, not because you're the bad thing setting foot in a church, but bad things are happening to you because the moment you do something that honors God, the spiritual warfare gets turned on and turned up. I think I'd relayed this before, but it probably would have been a while ago if I did. But there were 2 straight communion services. Our church does communion normally when we finish a book of the Bible, unless we're doing a really long book, then we'll do other services in between. But like if we're going through the epistles, you'll be going through a communion service every month and a half. 2 straight communion services. When we have a communion service, I bring my kids in with us for the communion service because I want them to take communion as well, instead of leaving them in children's church or children's ministry or family ministries, whatever you want to call it. 2 straight services, we have communion, and on the ride home, we're at each other's throats. 2 straight. Oftentimes, it's my own fault, allowing my own impatience or whatever's going on to feed into their whining or whatever's going on. 2 straight times it happened. Second time it happened. As it's happening, I stop myself right in the middle of it. Just turn to them and I'm like, as we're driving, go, do you realize what's happening right now? Like I didn't notice it the first time because that must be a sign of how immature I still am in my walk. Or how blinded I was by my own sin to be able to see it the first time. But the second time I saw it right away. And I said to my kids and my wife, do you realize what's happening right now? We just came from communion, from partaking in the Lord's Supper, from being in communion with Christ himself by the symbolic blessings of his broken body and his shed blood. This is a great thing we just did, a thing to honor Christ. And the second we walk out of that place, we're at each other's throats. Not because we're so wicked that we didn't deserve to take communion, but because the enemy hates so much that we did, that he needs to ramp up and whisper in our ear something that will cause us to fall from this great thing and great honoring of God and do something that dishonors him. We see a worker of iniquity in Balaam do this in the book of Numbers, which we went through. Balak calls him out, calls him to curse the people of Israel. And he tells him, I can't. I can only say what God tells me to say. So he continues to bless them and bless them and bless them. And Balak's furious. So Balaam says, you know what? I can't curse them. But what you can do is you can drag them down by their own sinfulness. So they make themselves a curse to God. And that's what they did through sexual immorality. See, me and my family are riding up high after taking communion and worshiping the Lord and praying over the brethren for their ills and their problems and their prodigals. And we're up here. So the enemy wants to see us, those workers of iniquity want to see us be brought low out of that place so we can make ourselves vile in the eyes of God by our sinfulness and how we're treating each other with a lack of love and respect, being at each other's throats. When we reach a great high, that's when the heat gets turned up to try to bring us low. David's up here. We'll see in the next chapter him be brought to his lowest state. So, rejoice in the blessings of God. Hold on to the joy that is in his promise. And don't let workers of iniquity steal the work, the joy, and the promises of God from you. Because they can't actually do it, but they can convince you that you don't deserve them. Because of your sin. That you don't deserve the glory of God. Now people will say, well, we don't. It's only through God's grace. Exactly, but it's grace he's given you because you've submitted to Christ. We haven't done anything to deserve it. But God has said, you are deserving of it. This is my gift to you. And when you take that gift to yourself and you make yourself his servant, his bondservant under his submission, that is when the pressure comes to tell you you're not even deserving of that. And that it's not true because you're too inferior to be in that position. We don't go to God because we're perfect. He accepts us in spite of our imperfection. Because he loves us. Because he's our Father. And because his Father does what is right for his children. He won't force them. He'll give them their own will, their own ability to step out and do things in their own way until they're smart enough to wise up and realize, I'm eating pig slop. I'd be better off being the doorman or the servant in my Father's house. And when we come to that place, it says, welcome back. I've always loved you. I've never forsaken you. Now let's join in communion. Let's be reconciled. Let's be at peace. and let's live in that joy that lasts eternally. So that's where we shall end it for this morning. I hope this was fruitful for you. I hope to see you again next time. But until then, be blessed.